Hello there. In this video I'm going to talk about creating Voronoi designs using Bezier objects in FluidDesigner for 3D lighting. So we're going to create lighting similar to those on the left hand side of your screen there. So if we go to FluidDesigner, first of all in the object library I'm going to go to light bulb fittings, and you've obviously got to work to a particular bulb size, so I'm going to use this E14 candle filament bulb 35mm, and just click on the workspace outside of the yellow box to make sure that that's centered on the cursor. Now what we need to do is to switch from the objects library to the groups library, and under group library we need to look for 3D templates Bezier lathe cross sections. And if I click on this icon here, there are a number of different Bezier cross sections that you can use. So you could create a triangular shape pendant lampshade, square one, or pentagonal, octagonal, etc. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a circular cross section one, and once you've selected that you can click OK and click on the workspace, and that will center it. Now if I open up the properties panel by pressing the N key on the keyboard, what we've got here are two different objects. We've got a circle cross section object, that's actually the main body of this object, but if I click over here on the left, the other object that's available is the cross section profile curve. And it's the profile curve that we use to reshape the main body of this object. Now because we're actually going to make a Voronoi style object here, you need to click on the main body of the object first of all, the circle cross section, and if you click on modifiers, there is a solidifier modifier applied to this. So this is assuming you want to print a pendant lamp, a solid pendant lamp. So at the moment the thickness is 1mm. Now if I change that to say 4mm, you'll see the thickness changing there, or say 6mm. Okay, so if you wanted to print a solid lamp, you'd use this solidify modifier. Now because we're doing Voronoi style, we actually need to delete that modifier, and we can remove it by pressing the X icon there in the panel. So we've now removed that modifier. So that's the first thing that you need to do here. And if we now go to view and front view, and if I click where it says main in the properties panel there, now we've got the main body, the circle cross section selected at the moment. Over in the panel on the left, if I click the profile curve, I mean I could open up this panel and you can see it says profile curve there. If I click the profile curve in the properties panel, it's clearly identifying that that's what we've got selected as well. So with the profile curve selected, if I press the tab key on the keyboard, what we've got with the profile curve is a Bezier curve on the left hand side of this object, in the profile of it essentially. And if I switch off the snap, and then pull this point around, you can see that I can reshape, reprofile my lampshade. And so you can play around with these until you're happy with a shape that suits you based upon the bulb that you're using. Now clearly one thing that's very important is how the bulb fits inside. Now if I actually switch to wireframe mode and just pull the bulb fitting up, now the bulbs that we've produced here are the right diameter and the right length, but the cables and the fitment above the bulb, you will have to decide those for yourself. So if I click on the profile curve again, make sure I've got the profile curve selected. So if I just pull that in and pull it down, whoa, don't want to go too far there. Okay, so I'm going to assume that that is okay, and I'm going to switch back to material mode now. Alright, so you do need to take into account of the bulb that you've got. Now once you're happy with the shape, You can press the Tab key to come out of edit mode. And we now need to create the Voronoi effect, and we do that using modifiers. And it's important here that you select the main body of the object, so in other words circle cross section needs to be selected, and this object at the moment is still a curve. And so what you need to do is you must change this, go to Tools, Objects, and you must convert it to a mesh. And if I press the Tab key on the keyboard, you'll see what that mesh looks like. Alright, so once you've got a mesh now, and we can't use the profile curve anymore, once you've converted it to a mesh, the profile curve is basically a waste of time. But once we've got the mesh, what we need to do is to go to modifiers, and we want 3 different types of modifier. We need a decimate modifier, a wireframe modifier, and a subdivision. Now, because so I'm going to select decimate first of all. Now, because the face count here is 4,608, you can see that at the bottom of the decimate modifier there. I'm going to select a ratio of, say, about 0.2. That reduces the face count down to 1,000. And I'm just going to close down that decimate modifier. I'm going to add a second decimate modifier. And by changing the ratio, I can change my face count. So I'm just dragging the ratio to the left and the right. You can see the face count changing. So I'm going to use that to create my Voronoi effect. Sometimes you only need 1 decimate modifier, sometimes more than 1. It just depends on the face count. Now what I need is a wireframe modifier. So you can now see it's starting to take on our Voronoi effect. And we also need a subdivision or subsurf modifier as well. Now, I would recommend setting the thickness to a minimum value of 4 in the wireframe there. I would recommend ticking boundary. I would try ticking relative thickness, but in this instance it makes a mess of it. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the even thickness you have to remove the tick. In this instance I'm going to leave it as it is. Now if you wanted, you could try tick increase edges, but that changes the appearance so that the individual edges there are all kind of uniform in thickness. I actually prefer that style. But what we need to do is to smooth it off even more, and we do that by changing the subdivision subsurf modifier to the view value from 1 to 2, and I would normally set it at 3. If you go any higher, the face count will be very high. So that's how you can smooth it off, and that's will mean that it'll work well, run well through Netfab Basic and 3D Print. Now the only thing you need to do now is to change the ratio. So if I change the ratio to 0.6 or 0.4, and you play around with the ratio until you get an appearance that you like aesthetically. Now you do need to always just double check at the top there, depending upon your cable and your fitments, to see that there's still space at the top, but that's essentially what you've got to do. So it's decimate, wireframe and subsurf. So that's how you can do it using these Bezier curve functions in FluidDesigner for 3D lighting. Thank you for watching.